Welcome to AZ Water's webinar on leveraging intelligent water to optimize operations in the water industry. My name is Gretchen Baumgartner. I'm the chair of the leadership committee, but I'm also the sponsorship coordinator for the conference committee. It's my pleasure today to introduce this topic and this speaker. This webinar is part of an extension of the 2020 AZ Water Conference. Its organization, Arcadis, was one of AZ Water's platinum level sponsors, and this is a part of the value that we create for our sponsors. So I want to welcome Arcadis and all of its speakers. Without conference sponsors like Arcadis, the conference wouldn't be as successful. So I want to again thank you. Thanks, Arcadis. Before we start, this Teams meeting is not a live, it's a Teams meeting. So I want everyone to remain on mute unless you have any questions. You are welcome to enter your questions in the chat function. You should also know that this webinar is going to be recorded and posted later on AZ Water's YouTube station. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this webinar, Esteban Azagra with Arcadis. Welcome.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thanks for the opportunity to present to the rest of our colleagues here. We have an exciting topic today. We are going to be talking about how to leverage intelligent water to optimize operations in our industry. And Dana is going to be helping me here with the slides. So Dana, let's go to the next one. I'll do some introductions on our panels. We have a great representation of the industry. So Tarja, you want to say a few words about yourself first?
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm Tarja Numela, Customer Service Manager from City of Tempe.
Steve, if you want to go next.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Stephen Rott, Water and Systems Technology Manager here for Scottsdale Water.
Excellent. Janice, you want to say a few words?
Sure, Esteban. So yeah, I'm with Arcadis, a service offering lead in the business advisory practice. Enjoy working with all types of utilities, water, electric, gas. So I'm glad to be here today.
Excellent. And about myself, I'm Esteban Azagra. I work with Arcadis. I help with business advisory services. And as Gretchen said, I'll be your moderator today. Just as a quick mention here, if anybody has any questions or comments, please use the chat. We'll try to address questions that, again, are posted in the chat throughout the discussion. We are also going to try to make this as interactive as possible through the use of a tool that we are going to see in a little bit. The whole idea here is to take advantage of having Tarja, Steve, and Janice in the call. They are a wealth of knowledge on this topic and others. And again, the more interactive, the more we get to ask them questions, the better. So let's go to the next slide. Dana, just gonna say a few words about health and safety. February is the American Heart Month. And as you can see in this slide, there is actually something we can do to minimize the risk, right, of having an issue with our hearts, which is still one of the, I think, is the 5th leading cause of death, unfortunately, in the country. And you can see on the left-hand side, right, a lot of the things that we not always do: healthy diet, get more hours of sleep, and so on. So just be mindful. We are only spending, I think, a lot of time in house, and this is a good reminder to walk and do all those things. Dana, let's go to the next slide. And let me introduce the agenda. So I'm going to kick off the discussion describing a few trends we see in the industry and building the case for why optimizing operations is a good thing to do, and maybe how we can do that through the use of emerging technologies, intelligent water. I'm going to be brief because the key to me of this presentation is then to hear what others are doing. So we'll hear from Tarja and what Tempe is doing in AMI, specifically advanced metering infrastructure. Steve is going to follow with several examples specific to use of analytics. And then Janice is going to dive into some details of what people can do with asset management. And at the end, we'll have an opportunity again to have some interactive session with the panelists. So before I get into the trends, Dana, if you can get us started with MNT, what I'd like everybody to do, if possible, use your cell phone or a browser and type menti.com. You can see the code at the top of the slide. So menti.com, and then punch the code 3003916. When you do that, you're going to be asked a question, which we would like to ask to set the tone right for the call. So how does operational optimization rank within your organizational priorities? And we can see we are starting to get answers. There is obviously no right or wrong answer, right? If everybody's already making this a high priority, well, maybe you can take advantage of today's discussion to get more ideas. If this is a low priority, maybe out of today we get a little bit of, interest, right? On, hey, others might be doing several things to optimize operations and get some benefits. So far, medium is getting most of the votes with several highs. And nobody thinks this is not a priority, which is probably good. I'm gonna let a few minutes. Few more seconds. Okay, I think we can go to the next question, which is actually again on Menti. We have another question which has now to do with what is the word that comes to mind, right, when you think about operational optimization. This is what we call a cloud word type of poll. So just type 1 or 2 or 3 words that come to mind, and let's see what is the term that repeats the most, right? Like, is it energy optimization? Is it, chemical usage? What is it that you think comes to mind when you think about operational optimization? Efficiency, that's a good one. Field efficiency, that's another one, good one. Process improvement. You will see that the word that gets the most votes, as you probably know, becomes bigger. So data is important. And again, as we see this, we are gonna definitely talk today about data, the role of data, so that's good. Then we're gonna see examples specific to energy. We are gonna get a good exposure actually to process improvement. One of the things that preparing for this I've been most impressed by some of our presenters is the diversity, right, of things you can do to improve processes and efficiencies. So all good topics, and I'll try to go back to them. There is interesting elements here like security. I'm not sure we've talked about that, so maybe we can make a note of that and discuss later on what the person had in mind. Okay, so Dana, let's go back to the PowerPoint, and let me talk about trends, right? I said at the beginning that I was going to try to set up the stage on why this is important. So let's click on the slide, and let me walk the audience through a few things that we are seeing, right, in the industry that we believe are really important to operational optimization. The first one is that the topic of operational optimization is on the rise. I personally have seen more interests in terms of projects, engagements specific to optimizing, hey, how are we doing within our treatment process? Are we being energy efficient? How are we doing as an organization? Are we mission critical and aligning with what we need to do? So there is definitely an interest out there on this type of projects. Focus on essential services is another one. And you could argue that maybe COVID made us more focused on the things we really needed to do to deliver water, right, while we are going through this crisis. I can tell you I've seen a few organizations that are actually taking advantage of that extra focus on essential services to almost take a deep breath and say, let's make sure we optimize everything we do around those key things we need to do, and then we'll focus on the remaining ones, right? So you could argue maybe there was a trigger effect, right? Then something around the role of utilities, right? I'm sure everybody is seeing that the role of utilities is emerging beyond just, and I use that with quotes, delivering water, right? We play a key role in terms of providing a primary service, right, to the industry, and we'll see in a slide later on that has some impacts, right, that might be really linked to efficiencies. And then the last element is that efficiencies are real, right? And I'm not going to say much about this. I think the most important thing is to hear from the members of the panel throughout their use cases, but there are definitely great things that we can do to improve operational efficiencies. Next slide, Dana. So a little bit of numbers, right? This graphic you see here is the result of a research done by Bluefield Research. It's an entity that actually did an analysis of the water industry in North America. And the interesting, to me, outcome of this graphic is that it shows how much money the industry is expending on operational budgets, right? That's the light blue line. And then you have the investment on capital, right, that you can link to renewal and replacement of your assets. And what you can see is that every time, right, we have a crisis, a recession, the amount of money usually available to renew and replace your assets diminishes. And that usually translates into having to spend more on fixing things, right, at the end of the day. And the challenge here is that you can see that line, those two lines, the gap between those two lines is widening. And that is a challenge, right? Because you know the rule of thumb, for every dollar you spend on preventative maintenance, you're going to spend 2 or 3 fixing things and up to 6 replacing it. So you could see that that's not a good place to be, right? If we are spending more and more on reactive maintenance and operational budget, and we don't have enough to invest in replacing assets, we are going to be in trouble, right? And then on the right-hand side, you can see some of the elements where we spend more of that O&M cost, right? Labor being number one, and then you have things from chemicals, I mentioned before, energy, and so on. Obviously, those things vary by organization a little bit. So next slide, Dana. I mentioned before the role of utilities, right? I'm a big believer that we do things beyond just the obvious of delivering water. I think we are a stable industry, and part of what we are seeing, right, with COVID-19 is the importance of that role, right? I think water affordability is becoming a key topic. Obviously, what we just saw happening in Texas, right, still going on, is increasing even more the profile of our industry and what we truly bring to humankind, if you wish, right? So why is this important, right? At the end of the day, making water affordable, especially to the people that cannot pay for it, is obviously a key, and it's really linked to efficiencies, right? We can increase rates, right, and try to fund the things we need to do or do bonds, but we can also try to, again, be more efficient to lower that cost of treating water. And I have one more slide before, again, getting the team here to talk about their use cases. And this is a little bit on what is the potential, right? We are going to be talking about how maybe emerging technologies, how different ways of looking at our industry can help us tap the potential, right, that we see in this slide. Again, this is the same research I mentioned. The reality is that you could argue our industry has been focused primarily on capital optimization. Most of the asset management programs we'll see later are focused on that. Well, there is a big potential, right, on savings on OPEX. And the whole idea today is to see what can be done on that front, right? And if we do that, obviously, we'll reduce the cost of water, and that translates into tremendous benefits. So that's my intro. I'm gonna go now and start introducing one by one for each segment the different presenters. Tarja, I think Dana, you click on the slide. We'll have Tarja talk about your experience on Tempe, right? Specific to advanced meter infrastructure. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Esteban. So City of Tempe completed its AMI project in 2019, and since then we have made several changes to our operations, and some of these operational savings are starting to pay off. Next slide, please. AMI definitely will bring you those measurable operational savings, and these can easily be seen in your labor and vehicle costs. We reduced our staffing by 50%. Since we reduced the number of staff members, we also eliminated some vehicles, and that reduced our overall fleet cost. We currently have 4 metering services technicians, and they are supervised by business system supervisor. And we reduced the number of vehicles to 6, which also includes 1 heavier, larger utility truck with all those tools. We also reduced the number of miles we are driving on daily basis, and that in return reduces our maintenance and fuel cost as seen here, which are both recurring the years to come, and as you can see, they are going down each year. We have seen also a significant reduction in our field activities. We don't need to complete those field activities out in the field, and they can be just completed in the office. Therefore, no longer do we need to send a truck out for every field activity. When we have a clean transition of service from one owner or renter to another, we complete all that activity in our office. And when we did our AMI case study in 2015, the cost of each truck roll was estimated at about $100. And we have seen about 50% reduction on those truck rolls since we have started using the network reads. We have also eliminated almost all of our reread requests coming from the CSRs to our field staff. Now our CSRs are able to assist the customers with the hourly reads available in the portal. Customer portal makes it easy for one-stop customer service. We have also become better in managing our real water losses by managing our idle accounts more efficiently. In the past, we got 1 monthly billing read, and that caused us to return to the property if there was unauthorized usage. Now we are able to watch those accounts much closer and get the resolution much quicker. All these changes in our operations are not only saving money, but they have changed our jobs and increased overall job satisfaction. We are more efficient reading all meters accurately and timely, leaving more time to manage the meters and replace meters and registers as soon as needed. We are increasing customer satisfaction by answering questions and providing quick turnaround on any field inquiries. In the past, we were just busy doing the daily work, and there was very little time left for maintenance. Next slide. So AMI has given us new opportunities to improve our operations with data we are able to collect. 2019 was our test year for the 2020 water rate study, and for the first time, we had AMI data available for our rate consultants. As we know, rate development can be a very complex process. It was very exciting to see how the consultants were able to take this vast amount of data that we had available now and show us and the utility customers what customer class is using water, when, how much, and what class causes the most stress on production and distribution. It also enables us to see where we may need to do some system improvements when you find those peaking factors of the highest water use date and time. If we are better equipped to develop, and this also enables us to better develop better budgets to meet our future and current asset needs. and our decision making becomes more data-driven with AMI. Our Water Utilities division has the need to collect also some pressure data throughout the distribution system. As all systems, Tempe has multiple pressure zones. Using data we can collect with the AMI endpoints, we hope to get better understanding how operational changes and changes in demand, and specifically seasonal fluctuations, impact on our our ability to maintain consistent pressure to our customers. A long-term goal is to gain better understanding of pressures throughout the system and improve our ability to find potentially closed valves and other operational changes that can have a negative impact on customers. Currently, identifying and locating these problems is very labor-intensive and takes crews away from other daily activities. This data can provide operational savings in labor cost, electric cost, and long-term maintenance of cost of the pumps and booster stations. AMI project helped us to automate meter operations in multiple ways. We implemented a paperless work order system to more efficiently update our CIS and asset management systems. All field orders are automated to update CIS for daily activities. We are receiving meter numbers in a file that can be pushed into the CIS and be ready for installation, taking away a manual time-consuming process with the potential for human mistakes. We also automated process to check, test, and replace meters based on the data in the billing system. In the future, we are planning on using more of the AMI data to predict and monitor slowing meters and proceed with replacements before meters actually stop. This is especially important with our larger non-residential meters, those meters with the biggest impact on revenues to our utility. We are also using AMI data to see any potential backflow events that might happen at the meter level. And we have found few cases of meter right-sizing. And these are situations where we have noticed that the meter is operating at maximum capacity and should be definitely upgraded to a larger size. So these are just few of the examples how we are using currently the AMI data, and how AMI has really helped City of Tempe become more efficient in our operations. And I'm sure that we find more and more of the user cases as we get more data and we develop a portal with ability to manage this data even better. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tarja. This is a great example that I'm sure for others that might be going through the journey or thinking about AMI can be quite reassuring. I think it's also a great example, you know, when we talk about digital disruption or intelligent water, what does that mean, right, in reality? Also a great example of how to become more proactive and less reactive. So thanks for sharing all those thoughts. And next, Steve, if you can help us understand what SCOSEL is doing in this rich world, right, of business intelligence, that would be great.
Certainly. Thanks, Esteban. Well, we've already heard that data is definitely important in helping us to optimize things from City of Tempe. And I know that Peter Drucker once said, you can't manage what you don't measure. In my opinion, at the very least, it makes it easier to manage a program, process, or business function if you can base your efforts on one or more key performance indicators and then trend those KPIs over time. Here at Scottsdale Water, our journey toward improved data reporting and visualization really began shortly after implementing our effective utility management program. We already had a number of performance measures that we were regularly monitoring, and I'm sure like most utilities, we were certainly generating plenty of data. However, as we began to connect the effective utility management attributes to specific performance metrics, a primary set of questions began to arise pretty quickly. those were questions along the lines of who's calculating this and how is it being calculated? And probably more importantly, what is the originating source of the data needed for the calculation? We often found that the performance metric calculations were being done by a specific staff member who had some vested interest in the metric, and they would download the data to their desktop computer, integrate it with a few other bits of information, possibly chart it, and then store it on their hard drive or on some shared server in an obscure folder that they knew about, but not necessarily everyone else. That meant that every time the metric was needed, the process of calculating it was manually performed by an individual, and that the performance measure was based on a snapshot of the originating data source. Well, this works as long as the individual remains with the organization, but it can be definitely problematic when the individual decides to leave the organization for one reason or another. So to help remedy this, we began working to improve our overall business intelligence. We started using a Microsoft Power BI platform, and we started the process with some of the following goals. We wanted to combine data from different sources and be able to perform analysis that was not previously possible or performed. We wanted to work with the end users to identify what their reporting requirements were and what data analysis they would like to see. In other words, even though we were already doing some performance metrics, we wanted to answer the questions, are we measuring the right things and what should we be measuring? We wanted to automate the data analysis to standardize the process. We needed to minimize the potential for human error, save staff time by automating repetitive tasks, and to ensure ongoing knowledge retention. And finally, we always wanted to start with the originating data set. In other words, we needed to identify the originating system of record in order to avoid duplication of data, data storage, and improve the overall quality of the data analysis. As you can kind of see in the slide, we initially started by developing a Kpi dashboard. This provided a link between the effective utility management attributes and the associated KPIs. The dashboard also provided a quick visualization of the current status of any one of the selected KPIs. And from the 50,000-foot viewpoint, this is great. It gives a quick visualization of where we might be standing. However, in order to improve the monitoring of both the effectiveness of our programs and the efficiency of any management change on those programs, we needed to dive a little deeper into the data. Building a business intelligence platform on a solid foundation allowed us to do just that. And now we're going to move into a couple of examples. So Dana, next slide, please. One set of the effective utility management based key performance indicators relates to preventative and corrective maintenance activity. Aligning our goal of using the originating system of record to extract the data for calculating KPIs meant that we had to link our business intelligence platform to our maintenance management system database. With that connection already having been made, we could develop additional business intelligence dashboards to further slice and visualize the data in greater detail. This allows us to answer questions such as, what is the preventative maintenance rate for a particular treatment facility over the last fiscal year or the last quarter or perhaps last month? Where are we spending the most time conducting maintenance? Which facilities generate the most corrective work orders? And how are specific work groups performing in regard to their respective maintenance activities? And things like how much overtime is being spent on maintenance activities at any specific facility or by a specific work group or individuals. And we can do all that at the click of a mouse. Next slide, please. Another set of EUM-based key performance indicators relates to pretreatment inspections and compliance. Here, the business intelligence dashboards enable data visualization that wasn't possible from the originating pretreatment software system. Thus, it completely replaced a tedious manual process to calculate those performance metrics, saving a significant amount of time and standardizing that process. Now, inspections can be visualized over a selectable time period by inspector and by type. Visualization also helped to identify certain anomalies with the data, things that were not easily identifiable without visualizing the data. In this particular case, once the data was visualized, we actually indicated a need for some additional staff training in a specific area. Data visualization also indicated that once that training was complete, that the training was effective. Next slide, please. Water quality monitoring dashboards enable us to quickly see the geographic distribution and relative concentrations of user selectable constituents across Scottsdale's water systems. And they can do that over a selectable time period. This is really helpful for managing disinfection byproducts and correlating the impact on DBPs from various operational or treatment changes. So indirectly, this links to our operating expenses for chemicals, energy, and other treatment costs. Next slide, please. You heard previously that energy costs can make up upwards of about 9% of the average utility operating expense. Scottsdale Water, we've got a significant elevation change across our system, so our energy expenses are well more than double that. So utilizing available energy use data, we can not only map out the sites with the largest energy usage, but we can start to trend that data to help us more accurately budget for those monthly expenses. More importantly, however, if we go to the next slide, this can help us also understand what drives our energy usage and better manage those costs. We can begin to overlay power monitoring data for an individual motor control center and the individual pieces of equipment tied to that MCC. Then we can begin to identify specific process areas and equipment that are driving energy usage. Additionally, overlaying SCADA data, detailing run status of major pieces of equipment within those process areas, we can further begin to identify specific equipment operations that are driving that energy usage. This is particularly useful for demand side of energy management. Power demand is a large driver in energy operating expenses. Therefore, being able to integrate and visualize our available energy and SCADA data helps us to better understand our energy use. Subsequently, it helps us manage our energy use and the associated operating expense. Now, these are just a few examples of how visualizing your data can quickly convert that data into information, which can both directly and indirectly impact your operating expense. Some quick lessons that I wanted to leave you all with. Sometimes this stuff can be a little seeming overwhelming. It doesn't have to be. Just start with the data you have. Identify where it originates, and then utilize available software tools to integrate and visualize your data. And that's it. Thank you. Esteban, back to you.
Thank you, Steve. I was reflecting on your comment that these are just a few examples. It's pretty impressive to see how you describe a vision, right? Which I think we all have on how to better leverage things across an organization, and then came up with a practical approach, right? Or maybe prioritize what you want to tackle first and start feeling right that sort of framework. So I'm sure later on we'll have questions to ask you, Steve. Excellent presentation again. So Janice, last but not least, asset management is something I think the industry has been talking about for a long time. More on the capital side, I believe. Why don't you tell us a little bit what others might be doing, maybe more holistically in this arena?
Yes, thanks, Esteban. And yes, we've heard some great examples. So here's just another one at Tarrant Regional Water District. So I want to share about their asset management journey. And this is an example is that's actually less about technology and about what utilities can do more efficiently with their business process and refinements from them. So let's take a look. So Tarrant saw a need to make some changes, right? They they approach they've typically approached their asset management of their linear assets in a very, like you said, a capital perspective. They also saw, though, that their water system was doubling in length, but their workforce was staying the same. So they had to do something, right? They had to make some changes. Their goals here, right, to create a ISO-based asset management program optimized with the use of SCADA to achieve 3 key outcomes: optimized performance, 100% reliability, and OpEx optimization. And in order to achieve those sustainable changes, they really had to dig deep into looking at this more holistically across their business and shift from a functional to a more business-centric approach. It required them to improve and really focus in on communications, on collaboration with the various departments and teams that included not only their asset management, team operations, IT, HR, as well as their project and program management organizations. So really forced them to look at this asset management initiative in a broader sense. So really at the bottom here, the big change is that realizing asset management is not a functional silo, but a series of processes that touch many aspects of an organization. Next slide, Dana. So the way they approach this, really right off the block, is again to have sustainable change here. One of their key success factors was involving the operations very early on in the process. And again, we talk about communications, but not only that, engagement and involving them in a way that to develop the program and have hands-on to that development of the program, so they're involved and have a voice as what the outcomes would be. So these operations folks, they did conduct the in-house inventory and condition assessments. They also developed their own condition assessment and risk impact analysis. Creating ownership here has created the opportunity for Tarrant to create long-lasting, sustainable change. Next slide, Dana. So many improvements, right, were achieved at Tarrant, and optimizing the operations side. These are just a few several key improvements. Identified and maintain critical assets, allowed them to have a continuous improvement program that carries on, again, sustainable. They ended up with a list of preventative maintenance work, really focusing on is there a program around that, or reducing the frequency as needed, right? So do preventative maintenance when necessary. It's not just about the time of the year or an age. There's a lot of detail there now. They've also implemented concepts such as run to failure. And it's not normally something that folks who are responsible for keeping things in operation, they run to failure, but it is an effective way to manage your operations monies. They ended up having a set of standard operating procedures that cleaned that up tremendously, improving their documents and knowledge retention for staff now current, and then certainly for future. They have also explored, and are exploring, I should say, inventory management optimization, improving the data capture in the field with various tool sets, and most importantly, again, have an effective voice at the table during discussions from an operating perspective that informs decisions on budgets moving forward. One last slide here I wanted to share. So, as from a perspective of what else could be done, there are advanced asset management optimization tools and optimization techniques that are becoming more available, and there's definitely more interest in them. Certainly as you kind of span the spectrum here from descriptive, what has happened historically, to diagnostic, why did it happen, to predictive, what would happen next, and then to prescriptive, what should you do, right? This is a change even further that will empower utilities to do more and to be more efficient with their and optimizing their operation monies. So even Bluefield in that research that they've done that research recently. So they study as well, including powered by AI and predictive analytics, U.S. water utilities have the potential of saving $17 billion in capital between 2018 and up through 2027. So the truth is, while many assets are at or near the end of their expected lives on paper, most utilities lack the insight on health and performance of their assets in practice. Utilities can optimize their approaches by moving away from relying on industry standard data and algorithms to be more utility-specific data, which can be a continuous learn and improvement process. So some exciting stuff out there with regard to advanced asset management optimization techniques and tools. And back to you.
Thank you, Janice. A few things you said I believe were really remarkable. The first one, you know, is the people, right? I think we've been hearing about asset management for a while. I always say probably humans have been doing asset management since the Egyptians, right? But how often do we connect asset management programs truly with the people touching the assets, right? Operations, as you said, because if they buy into the program and see the value, I believe you have big things accomplished. The other item I think is you mentioned this slide, right? Predictive to prescriptive, how similar this is to what Tarja was showing, right? On AMI, the things you can do, right? Once you have good data in place. So, and then the last one is asset management is more than CapEx, right? I think that's, if you ask me, a theme, again, an emerging theme that the industry is starting to realize you can truly optimize both sides of the equation. So all that is great, and I wanted to thank the three of you for those insights. We have 10 minutes to now get into the most interactive part of the presentation. Hopefully we'll all learn a lot and have some fun. So Dana, I think you're gonna try to get us again with the Mentimeter, just to make sure everybody should be able to refresh the screen or click on that link that is in the chat with the code number. And we're going to have a series of questions once again. So here we go. People are already into that. The first question is data helping you optimize how you use power? Very specific to the use of data to optimize energy consumption. And while we see the answers, and it seems pretty even, Steve, if that's okay, I'm going to put you on the spot, right? You show a great example on how Scottsdale is paying a closer look at the data consumption. How did you do it? I mean, is it just about data you were already gathering? Did you have to make a big investment on gathering the data? And how is that journey working for you guys?
Actually, there was quite a bit of data we were already gathering. We had a number of power monitors, particularly at one of our large treatment facilities, our water campus here. And so those were tied into SCADA, and literally we just started incorporating that information, had lists of equipment that were tied into each of those MCC panels, and literally correlated that back to our energy invoices, so the primary power meters coming in. So it really doesn't have to be a long drawn out process, and it doesn't have to be a major capital expense or equipment installed to get this started. Like I said before, start with what you have. If it's a simple monthly power bill, start with that. Start putting it into some kind of data set and just be able to start to visualize that information.
Steve, just a question. How did you go about on your team to figure out where to start? Did you guys have a discussion, or did you just have a need or a problem that you're trying to solve that you started there?
Actually, it's kind of interesting. I think originally it started with we had one of our finance folks was actually tracking a fair amount of the power invoice data, mostly from a cost standpoint. And that's really what they were using it for. We simply found that in discussions with him and started expanding a little bit on the data that was being collected and really started from there. So, you know, even though we're now incorporating this into a Power BI, originally it started in Excel, and I'm sure that's how most utilities are probably trying to do this, but that's quite honestly how we got started. Now we're trying to incorporate electronic invoice information directly from our power utilities. So making things a little bit more automated and less human interaction with that data transfer. So
Steve, that's great. I think maybe a theme there, right, is making it real, connecting what you want to do with the impact, which in this case could be really track the cost, right, with the billing. One last item on this though, data quality is usually a challenge, right, when we get things from SCADA, power monitoring devices. Any lessons learned, any thoughts on that?
Yes, this was definitely one of those areas where once you start visualizing the data, you have to start questioning what it is you're gathering. When we started initially trying to pull in the SCADA data from the power monitors, we realized that when they were originally set up, they were set up essentially to totalize, just like a flow meter. From a power management standpoint, that's not really what you want. You want the instantaneous peaks, the highs, the lows, because you want to be able to manage the power demand, which is more of an instantaneous thing, not a totalization of that information. So we're having to go back in and actually change the way that data is collected. But we honestly probably would not have noticed that or seen that if we hadn't started visualizing the data.
Excellent. You know, my humble opinion, I think a big inflection point for all of us, and not only our industry, right, with those tools, business intelligence tools that really allow you to tap into data, regardless of where the data is and even the quality. I think with a relatively low investment or effort, you can start trying to put that data to work. And even if at the beginning that's going to help you diagnose that the real problem is the data quality, that's already an advancement, right? So I think the shift is from big IT investments to, hey, let's put what we have to work with tools that are more readily available. Excellent. So let's click on refresh, I think, Dana, to look at our next question. What progress has your organization made towards transitioning to AMI? And Tarja, I think we're going to put you on the spot if that's okay. I'm sure a lot of people are at different stages, right, of AMI, from a dream and a vision. How do we get from manual to or drive-bys to something in place, to business case development, to making it happen, all the way to reaping the benefits? So we are seeing actually the majority, we just have 6 answers, right? So, but there is still a little bit of, or quite a bit of planning. The industry is really moving towards AMI. So what are your thoughts? What are the lessons learned on the 3 stages? You're muted, Tarja.
Sorry, I muted myself. I think everybody's always worried about the cost, but then you start looking at the benefits. And I think that in water industry has been running behind the electric industry, but our customers are going to be those drivers. They demand this data. They get it from the electric utility, and now they want the same from us in the water industry. There are so many benefits that are so hard to measure, and everybody always says that it doesn't pay off. But those intangible, those soft values are so important, that we've seen that. I have had some CSRs who said that, how did you ever serve your customers without AMI data? And of course, then looking at that, we are really getting 99.9% of our reads, billable reads, from the network. So we have very, very few reads that we had to go out there. So now we're able to really focus on the maintenance side, really keeping track of those meters. We are not so reactive, that we can actually plan ahead how we're going to do the meter replacements, how we can plan for this work. And as I mentioned earlier, also the employee satisfaction. They are developing new skills. They are just more interested in the job, that it's not just that busy work getting that read for billing every day.
Thank you, Tarja. Maybe elaborating on that last point, right? The people side is probably a critical element on many of the things we're talking about. Did Tempe have to go through a major change management effort to bring people up to speed with the new technology? I'm sure there are fears, right? What is it going to happen to my role and all that?
I would agree that change management is probably the most difficult part of any manager's job, because there's always fears when you're introducing new technology or anything. People are fearful. We talked about it openly right from the beginning, what we're doing. We also planned ahead that we made the promise to staff that nobody's going to lose their job. And we were very fortunate that we were able to keep that promise, because we just managed our staffing accordingly. So sometimes it meant that we had just more temporary employees working and permanent employees. So change management is difficult, but I think communication, Janice, you touched on that earlier. Communication. I don't think we can over communicate. Same thing with our customers, because there's some level of concern from the customers that trust factor is important part there. So yeah, I would close with communication.
Excellent. And Tarja, we have a question from Chris Mesa. Has Tempe tried to estimate water volume saved through early leak detection on the customer side?
Actually, I can provide some of that data we have with our WaterSmart. I don't have it in front of me here, but I'll be happy to provide that if he sends his contact information. But we are doing that through WaterSmart, because we are keeping track of the notifications we are sending to customers on potential leak events.
Excellent. Chris, we'll make sure that, Tarja has your contact, and obviously for a desert where we live, right, if anything we can do to help quantify, right, the savings is a great thing. So thank you, Tarja. Let's move on to the next question. We'll keep the dialogue going. This is a binary question, right? Is your AMM program primarily focused on capital or on operational optimization, right? Are you thinking about renewal and replacement, helping me with your, the CIP planning, or are you focusing on the OPEX? I'm not surprised by the answers, right? I think we talked about the fact that historically has been capital driven. No surprise. Janice, any thoughts from you on this? You want to elaborate on the answer and maybe how we balance that graphic?
Yeah, one of these, this is always a challenge, right, with asset management. Capital operations, to me, they are connected. We see this from time and time again, right? What your investment in capital is going to improve your ability to improve your operations, and even on the flip side, manage your capital. So, the involvement of the team, right? We talked about how Tarrant really focused in on and made it not just a operations project. It was a utility project. It was an initiative where all folks were involved, and they worked together to get to those achievements that we talked about just a few minutes ago. So yeah, I would encourage to really start to think beyond capital, right? Let's start working towards how we can and look at that as more of as well as an operations benefit, because they are tied, they are connected.
Thank you, Janice. And I would add that it's a great start if you do the capital, because that would force you to do your inventory condition assessment. The challenge, in my opinion, on the OPEX is not a one-time deal, right? You can do a CAPEX optimization every 5 years, but to make the operational optimization happen, you truly need to make it part of your business, right? Which means your inventory needs to be updated, and you need to optimize your CMMS, your PM, and all that. And going back to your presentation, Janice, right? If you get operations to really see the benefits, and I think Tarrant did great examples, like giving them a voice. Hey, if I do my part, my input becomes reflected on the budget. There are many things, right? So it's tougher, but I'm of the opinion that it really pays off. It becomes, again, a business transformation, not a one-time deal. Excellent. Let's go to the next slide. The next question, Dana. What change or improvement has your organization had to implement because of COVID-19, which you feel is long-lasting? So is there any silver lining, right, in all these challenges we are going through? Have you uncovered any best practices throughout COVID that you think, hey, maybe this is something we can embrace, right? We have work from home. That's a good one. While we get the names, any thoughts from any of the panelists?
Yeah, Esteban, I think one of the areas that I think many utilities or many businesses, it doesn't even necessarily need to be utilities, is the fact they've had to really focus in on the vintage of equipment for work at home, right? So I think the life cycle of computers and laptops and whatnot have really had to been rethought and reevaluated, because it's a challenge, and you want to be as efficient as possible to be effective working from home.
Excellent, Janice. I had a chance to talk to several leaders from our industry in December, and we actually asked this question. And to me, one of the themes that has emerged, besides, right, we don't have to pay for consultants traveling all the time, that could be savings, although I must admit I miss seeing people face to face. There is the remote work, but the one that really caught my attention is, I think our industry, the human capital, right, the human side of our industry has really proven we are up there, right? We changed pretty quickly. We adapted to the new ways of working, and everybody did their job. So there is, I think, an emerging discussion about, hey, let's make our industry even more attractive by embracing maybe ways of work that other industries might have done before. So that's personal thought together with things I heard. Okay, virtual meetings. So there we go. Human capital, work from home. I think it's all that, right? Excellent. Any thoughts, Steve or Tarja, from you before we move to the next slide? I think we have time for one more question, but I'd love to get any comments from you on this important one.
I was just going to say that I think AMI also helped us that in case we had cases of COVID-19, we didn't need to be there in the office. We were paperless. We had those AMI reads. We really were able to schedule and manage our work remotely and very efficiently.
So health and safety element, right, Tarja, even beyond not having to drive. So that's a very, very interesting one. Okay, I think we might have time. Gishin might get mad at me, but let's do one more. This is a question around what are the obstacles that your utility faces preventing you from using more tools to optimize your operations, right? So what are the roadblocks? And maybe as we get input, Steve, picking on you first, what would be your number one thing?
Probably the thing that I think we would find, and it already showed up here, cost, and that's both just time and capital to get some of the IT components maybe set up. It takes a little bit of time and an effort to get some of these tools up and working, but definitely saves your operating costs in the long run.
Excellent. Tarja, if you have something, go ahead, or Janice. Otherwise, I'm gonna thank everybody and let Gretchen wrap us up. I think we're good, Gretchen. Go ahead.
All right, awesome job. Thanks, guys. First, I want to, utilizing this as springboard off that, thanking all the attendees. I know this last year on all of us have been an exercise in adapting. So as the AZ Water representative here, I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this webinar. And, as an association, we always find ways to create value for our membership. And this year has been a learning experience for everybody. So we hope that the webinar was useful for everybody. I also want to thank Arcadis, Esteban, and Janice as the conference sponsor for last year's conference. This is one of the values that we created, and I think this has been an excellent partnership, and we want to thank Arcadis for this. If anyone has any questions, any attendees have any questions about your PDHs, it should get into your email box within the next 24 hours for the email that you used to register this webinar. If you don't get it or you have any further questions, you can always email staff@azwater.org. And beyond that, I just want to say thank you to Arcadis and Steve and Taria. I learned a lot myself, and I want to tell everybody to have a great afternoon, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again, Richard.
Thanks, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.